Hi guys, so I probably don't need to tell you that there's been a lot of talk about police brutality lately. I'm sure you've noticed. And what I want to do, I don't want to take away from the Black Lives Matter movement at all. I understand as best I can as a white person why it's important. What I want to do is add to the conversation because no one's talking about the disability community. Mental illness, yes, but not other disabling conditions. Um, I wasn't entirely sure, sorry, I'm trying to look at a note here, how I was going to do this video because if I were to describe my channel, I would say raising awareness through lived experience. I thought about that for a while, and that's how I would describe my channel. I've never had a bad mental illness related interaction with police. So I thought, do I have lived experience? And then I thought, wait a minute, yes, I live with fear that probably not everybody does. I am afraid of the police. My mom and I even recently had a conversation where we agreed that we will never call 911 for help if I'm having a mental health issue. I was shocked, but a year and a half ago, when I called 911 for help during a mental health episode, and the police showed up. I was aware of issues with police in the mentally ill, but I was under the assumption that they were getting involved in those cases when there was an aspect of violence. Um, in 2013, Google Sammy Yateen on a streetcar in downtown Toronto. He was shot to death by police. He was waving around a knife during this episode, and I thought it was because he had a knife that made it dangerous that the police were called. I didn't realize that they respond to all mental health. I thought it would be paramedics because it's health, it's medical. The CBC has a really good documentary about the police dealing with the mental health in Canada that I saw probably 4 or 5 years ago, and that really stayed with me. But again, I assumed there was a specific reason they were involved in those cases, not that they respond to all mental health. So now that I know that, um, I will no longer be calling them for help because of the fear I live with. Um, my biggest fear right now is having a meltdown in public because of my mask. There's always reasons that I could have a meltdown in public, but the fear is amplified right now because I find the face masks very hard to tolerate, and there is bylaws in place right now that include having to wear masks on transit. And I'm worried I'll be on a bus, it'll be stuck in traffic or hot or stinky or crowded, and I won't be able to tolerate everything going on plus the mask, and I'll start crying and freaking out. And I'm afraid someone won't understand. Someone will call 911 for help. I'm picturing myself being shot by the police. That might be blowing things out of proportion, I don't know. But maybe it's not. Considering all the protests going on, there's obviously a problem. There's actually a protest right now as I speak in front of police headquarters in downtown Toronto. And if it wasn't so serious, it would be funny because they're playing in Canadian stereotypes. They walked calmly down the street, no one's breaking anything, they're all wearing masks. It's I just saw it on the news and the visual will stay with me, I'll tell you that. So obviously there's an issue with police violence. Maybe I'm not overthinking it, maybe it is a valid fear. I don't know, but I have the fear nonetheless. I have this fear that I will be shot by the police. I spoke to Curious Place Autism Services. They gave me a wallet card that identifies me as a person with autism, um, among other things, and it has their logo on it. So I'm hoping that does the trick if there's an issue and I can show that to the police. And I am a short, fat, white nerd. Like, I don't think I look like much of a threat, so I hope I'm okay. But it still, even having the card makes me nervous because people with visible disabilities have been killed by the police. Um, there was a story in the States. Look up Ethan Saylor. This was a man with Down syndrome who was at a movie theater with a worker. When the movie ended, he did not want to leave. And the worker said, "You have to wait. He's going to be stubborn, but he'll get up and leave eventually." The manager's flipping out and saying he has to leave or buy another ticket, decides to call the security guards who were moonlighting cops. They pulled him out of his seat because he was refusing to move, and when they got confrontational with them and telling him to move, he just got more behavioral. He didn't like being talked to like that. And they clearly had no understanding of this or didn't care, decided he was resisting them, yanked him out of his seat, and they had him pinned on the ground, which must sound familiar, and he suffocated. And I only know of this story because of the all the different special needs groups on pages I'm involved in on Facebook. This did not get any media coverage. In no way am I saying George Floyd's death should not have gotten media coverage, but I would like to have seen this kind of outrage for this guy's story as well. But nobody cares about the disability community. Has become evident to me over the years. Because even if you don't know anything about developmental problems, maybe you don't even know the word Down syndrome, when you see a person with Down syndrome, anyone should know this person has a disability. They have good, bad, or indifferent distinct facial features that are unique to that disability. So anyone should know. These cops knew. You can't tell me they didn't know. Right? Either they didn't care or they didn't understand, and a human being died. And no one talks about this. And that's why, even though I have my card to show them, that's maybe it won't make a difference. Maybe they still won't care or understand. And I wanted to have some statistics to back myself up for this video. So I did some Googling, and I found a website called the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's an American website. It says half of people killed by police have disabilities. Now, it includes mental illness as a disabling condition, and that has been talked about in the protests. The protest going on in Toronto downtown right now is because of a death of a woman with mental illness who died during a police interaction, and now the police have not been found liable. We've had a few of these in the last few months, and they've all been visible minorities as well. Um, that's the protest going on right now. So this is a somewhat known fact, but I think it needs to be publicized more. Because when you get into, something visible like Down syndrome, or a video I saw online of police being brutal to a man using a wheelchair, it should provoke outrage. Now, I'm not that shocked that it doesn't because of how society views disabled people, but it should, because just like any other marginalized group that particularly racialized people that seem to have disproportionate trouble with the police, the disabled people need respect as well. They need understanding, and society needs to pay attention, and I feel like they're not, and so I live with this fear, because no one seems to care, no one talks about it, no one does anything about it. And if you're thinking that I'm in Canada, and we don't have guns and violence like that, unfortunately, our police do carry guns. Most developed countries, they don't. I suspect it's because we're next to the States. Most of our guns come from the States. We had earlier this year the biggest mass shooting in Canada's history, and those guns came up from the States. So I think that's maybe why our police carry guns as well. So because they carry guns, they're not trained in other de-escalation techniques. That seems to be the theme here. When compared to other developed countries, they have more ways. Regardless of whether police should be answering mental health calls, they do have other ways in other countries of dealing with it that I don't see in Canada. And it has happened here. People with not just the mentally ill people I've spoken about. There was a case of a man with intellectual disability who was shot by police in Toronto. He was with his mom walking I think they were going to get pizza, and he had a tendency to walk ahead of her. So she taught him to stop when he got to intersections and wait for her to catch up. And so he's waiting for her. She's down the street somewhere. And apparently from behind, he matched the description of a missing person. And the police were calling his name, and he was not turning around and responding, which they interpreted as resisting, apparently, and shot him and killed him. So there needs to be training, at very minimum, different training for the police. so they know how to interact with someone with a disability. Maybe so they don't assume someone not answering is resisting. Maybe so they think of other possibilities. I don't know what the entire answer is. I'm not an expert, but something needs to change. And I want to end this with a story that I shudder to think what would have happened if I hadn't been there. Not that I'm painting myself as a hero. This happened 10 years ago, and I believe I've told one other person. It just doesn't occur to me to run around and gloat about it. But I wanted to share the story. Um, as a bit of a lighter, not lighter, but more positive way to end the video, because this is a story that ended well. And it's sheer dumb luck that I was even there. I was on the bus on my way home from college classes, heading back to my house, and I actually missed my stop where I would normally transfer. So I stayed on the bus to get down to a terminal where I could get a different bus to get me to where I wanted to be. And I get off the bus at this bus terminal, and I see a man. I recognized him. He worked in a movie theater near me. This man, I would say, has mild intellectual disability from having interacted with him. And someone with MID, depending exactly what their IQ is, they function like a 9 to 12-year-old child. So I see this man, and he's at one of the ticket machines, and he's kicking it and getting really angry. And people are getting in his face, saying, "I want to buy a ticket, get out of the way, stop this." And he's not responding to them. He's kicking the machine. So I don't know him if he's going to be violent. So I did keep my distance, but I spoke to him calmly. I asked him what the problem is. He told me he was going to be late for work because the bus was late, and he was worried that his boss would be mad at him. And think about children and how children are about breaking rules, unless they're really spoiled. But typically, how children worry about breaking rules was how this man was viewing it. I doubt the manager would have flipped out if he was a couple minutes late because of the bus. I mean, it's not ideal to show up to work late, obviously, but particularly for this individual, I think they probably would have been understanding. But to him, it was a big, big deal, and he was very upset. So what I did, I acknowledged he was upset, and then I made it about him. When you discipline a child, you have to make. They don't care about other people in the world. You have to make the punishment or the discipline something that matters to them. So I pointed out to him that if he kept picking the machine, what if it broke? And then he got in big trouble, and now he's in really big trouble, and now he definitely can't go to work. And when I said that, he thought about it, and he realized that I was right. This could make things even worse, and he stopped kicking it and backed away. And fortunately, we were taking the same bus, and the movie theater's near my house. We were getting off the same stop even. So I sat with him on the bus, and he was still being a little bit violent, saying some inappropriate things. But I kept reminding him that he would have a bigger problem if he kept acting like this. He was going to get even bigger trouble. I said, you can go tell the bus driver that you're angry if you want, if that makes you feel better. Tell him you're displeased, and then come right back to your seat. And I sort of kept my eye on him so he didn't make a big production with the driver. And then I made sure as soon as we got to our stop, I made sure he went right into the movie theater. I didn't let him focus on his bus anger. I said, "No, go to work. You gotta start work." And he went right into the theater. And obviously nothing came of it negatively because there was no story on the news of the police shooting this guy or anything like that. I don't know that's necessarily what would have happened, but I don't know it wouldn't have happened either. I happen to have experience with special needs of many types, so I knew what I was seeing and how to speak to this man. A lot of people wouldn't, and clearly didn't, from what I was observing. Plus, the police seem to have some of them, I shouldn't say all of them, have some sort of like authority complex or whatever you want to call it, where they don't care. They just want everyone to do what they say and they rule everything. And taking that approach with that man would not have gone well. So I'm extremely glad I missed my stop and ended up at that stop. I shudder to think what would have happened if I hadn't been there. Hopefully, someone else with knowledge would have come by. But it ended well. He got to work. No one got hurt. No one got in trouble. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now. And thank you for watching.